award degrees, particularly ESAMI in Arusha, Uganda Management Institute in Kampala, which bring out graduates that have special and reputable qualifications. And why is it that they produce credible products? Because they are teaching, research, and project production has an input of high-level discussion, high-level involvement, and this is the way to go. Another good quality or qualities of a good supervisor, a supervisor must have empathy, must be a parent, as Professor Tsekwa told us, and Dr. John Kinyuru. The students of these days are too busy. The space of technology has widened their knowledge structure, and some of us who were born before computers, we might have limitations. And then, of course, a good supervisor must have good attitude towards the student. Down within the slides, I'll show you how to mark. But previously, if I could have landed on my bachelor's degree assignments, you'd find a lecturer just making a straight line, a diagonal line in your assignment. But I was lucky for my master's and PhD. I was supervised by a different brass of supervisors, Alan Hamilton and Tony Cunningham. Where I lacked, they put, and even put the reference and gave an assignment to make sure that I read the reference. And for my PhD, it was terrible because my supervisor, Jeremy Mijere, would even take me to the library and show me the shelves and show me the Web of Science computer lineup, how to get into the subject matter, the catalog matter, and all was good. For example, in terms of guidance, modern students no longer attend orientation on how library operates, how author catalog operates, because of technology. And these are the limitations that during the onward course under the Training and Extension Vision of ICAD and EDI and any other partners who would join us, because it's catching fire, we should improve and make sure that some of these orientation programs are mandatory. If need be, since we have become militaristic globally, we should enforce attendance. Then a good supervisor must be accountable, on time, resources, and must be a good negotiator, because there's no research that doesn't require accountability, and there's no research that doesn't require resources. And as long as you can't do accountability to government and donors, then you can't help your upcoming researchers to access funding, even to access networks, as long as they are tagged by your name. And a good supervisor must be flexible, not stuck in one corner, and must know the civics of the day, the current knowledge, because knowledge makes academicians remain alert. You could be researching, let's say, on stem cell, you could be researching on modern human rights styles, you could be researching on the dynamics of algebra in the context of the big computers that analyze data in a short time, and yet it was taken by events last evening. So you must be knowledgeable and alert. Knowledge and expertise on the subject of research is very important. Should you find yourself deficient of your student's new idea, then you read. You even be honest to the student so that both of you read together. Patience and able to navigate circumstances, both easy and challenging, is another good quality. Of course, without patience, some of the supervisors, as Dr. Kinyul told us, that some supervisors must hunt students from their apartments. You will lose out. And should be tagged to a student and the student doesn't qualify or finish, you will also have failed. And finally, on the other qualities within this PowerPoint, we talk of seniority. A student can't supervise a student. And we must stop this if ever it is happening. The next slide is taking us to student supervisor SWOT analysis, which I talked about. And at this juncture, this is where we shall draw our breaking into two groups. I am your student, those of you who are in this discussion. What are your desired strengths you want from me? You want to supervise. You want that I make your work of supervision easy. Then on the other side, what are your experiences and qualities of specific qualities graduate students want from supervisors and research promoters? Is it only to get resources because you are good at fundraising as a professor, good at fundraising? I recall all of us wanted to shift from our faculties and go to agriculture during those days because the likes of Professor Depala, Professor Vihayo, and many others, Professor Chamanywa, they had small jobs of data entry. So one would say, why not go there? But let me tell you why I put this slide. And we have on the x-axis students, and on the y-axis we have the supervisors. What are the maximum qualities and minimum qualities of a student? And what are the minimum qualities and minimum qualities of a student and of a supervisor? When we tag all these, then we get to know who should supervise who and which student should be tagged the supervisor, so that we promote what is lacking in the student, and we also make sure the supervisors get experience from where they have not supervised. And this is what is done in university. In the first 3 weeks, all honors degree, master's degree, and PhD degrees are brought together for common courses. And in most cases, as we had yesterday, Professor Tsekwa tell us, you find about 60 to 80% of all the students will be bungled into a cohort of biometry and statistics. You'll find about 30 to 50% are put in a cohort of critical thinking, depending on the analysis of the master's transcript for PhD and bachelor's or honors transcript for master's. How many of us in our universities do this? Finally, the supervisor provides regular feedback to the student, assignments, and new areas known to the supervisor out of senior invents work and invention. And for that matter, the student and the supervisor may have different working styles or communication preferences due to IT era competencies. And this is where those universities that do SWOT analysis of their supervisors vis-a-vis the new students gives them the new positioning for all the new graduates to progress very well and finish very fast. The next slide is on graduate school, department, faculty, and college student supervisors required qualities. Different departments, different faculties, and different colleges, and even in universities, we must consider the following qualities seriously. I might be confident in my subject, but I'm not confident in the statistics. And in modern universities, if you are to do a master's or a PhD, you don't have to go into the first principles of statistics. Instead, you become honest to your supervisor and the department where you are deficient. And at masters, they give you an undergraduate student in statistics who has an interest in your subject. Then at PhD, you get students. You find every PhD in some of these universities like London College, Harvard, University of Nairobi here, I've seen it, Makerere University, and even we had started it at Timbara University of Science and Technology. I have heard about it in JKUAT, Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. And I heard about it at Sokoine University. A PhD student, a PhD program and project has at least 2 or 3 masters on the same subject. This enhances and fast tracks the delivery of the investigation. Another quality is sharpness. I want to assure this meeting and all of you listening to me, unless if you are sharp, particularly where it is said research, there's anything new, you must be sharp to look for the gaps. Automatically, the argument will be that we have 3 forms of research: exploratory, where you can think about and reason and come up with a new area. But I want to assure everyone, there's nothing unresearched. We are only filling gaps. And in order to fill gaps, we must be very sharp. We must also have the comfort to share. We must have the comfort to bring everybody on board to like the subject, to like the investigation. And by that matter, you find such a subject will be exhaustively comprehended. And in the end, the exhaustively comprehended subjects and investigations are the benchmarks for innovation and invention. I'll give you an example of universities that do not allow more than 2 objectives at PhD, 3 objectives at masters. Why? Because they want you to exhaustively do the work rather than recommending. You are doing a PhD, you are doing a master's, but at the same time, you are recommending further research. That means you have not done any research. There is need for uniqueness. How unique is your investigation? How unique is your supervision? And if you are unique, how many are interested in the supervision that you are doing, in the research that you are doing? Particularly to do with subjects that require practicals. Technology has increased that the methods of experiments are changing day by day. But then we must not forget that we cannot advance at the same time. Therefore, the historical methods must be kept. What do I mean here? For example, there is only one material on earth that does not rot. Everything will rot, but pollen will never rot. The great research on pollen called Rotem in 1956 came up with an assertion that pollen does not rot through a microscopic structure of analysis of pollen. And up to today, nobody has come up with a new method on ascertaining whether pollen rots or not, or how to draw pollen maps. The only attempted scholar to beat Rotem was David Taylor of Trinity College Dublin, but up to now, he has not succeeded. So sometimes we have to accept that historical methods will be used and they must remain until a new and modern method overrides the historical one. We must be assertive. And I put this quality, having been a head of department, having attended the Senate, having attended council. Some of our students we supervise suffer because of lack of assertiveness of the supervisor. You'll find a policy that is bogging down your student until you're assertive in the department, in the faculty, or you send feelers to Senate or to council, some of the students will not graduate. Then there is need for independence. I want to assure you, we lack independence. And the moment you don't have academic independence, then supervision will not go down very well. An example on independence is if you are a supervisor and you have limited publications, students will come up with references that we are even not aware of. You might cancel. So we need the independence to navigate around, and as we navigate, we need to highly publish. Another quality is compassion. Mathematically, for some of you who are doing mathematics or physics, particularly biomathematics, that compares life structures with how to predict and project future dimensions. You must be compassionate because you yourself and some of your students will collect data either from patients or from airing environments, but today we can send gadgets to collect data, but at some time you need ground truthing to go to a ward and see how malaria is devastating patients and humanity. It's when you'll be able to draw a model that will solve what you have seen vis-a-vis the ground truthing. And in that matter, if you are meeting patients, you must be kind. Elegance. The elegance is a connotation when we go to disseminate our information. In most of the inaugural lectures, students do not talk, but in workshops and departmental dissemination, students talk. Until you are arrogant enough within the subject, you might be outsmarted by your own students. It is from that experience that most supervisors become inventive, and that will be your turning point. And it always happens. And you eventually become creative, and you run in harmony with the juniors. And that is why in most departments, it has become mandatory to have departmental seminars, to have even undergraduates present what they intend to investigate on. I recall in those years in Makerere, every third year had to do a project. But you'd do it with emphasis on the subject that you intend, because we had career tutorial assistant. They would advise that you do a third-year project in a subject you'd wish to do at master's, implying they were the foundation for the next reading. Again, any good supervisor must be philosophical. We don't have to make students understand us. We don't have to make students see things as if they are on a silver plate. You must interrogate their thinking, interrogate their reasoning, and that is being philosophical. After all, PhD is Doctor of Philosophy. And at this point, I would wish to ask everybody in attendance, how many of our universities teach philosophy of science? The philosophy of science brings out critical thinking, brings out rational idea development and idea mooting. Critical thinking dimensions are different and are subject specific, but this is a common course like development studies, which all universities would do as of semester one for any graduate reading. Then problem solving skills, because we research on problems and we must know how to solve physical problems, virtual problems, and any other problem that is within the objectives of our research. And then finally, supervisors must be aware of the such ideas and such gears in academia. When all these SWOT analysis and qualities have been done, then this gives intelligence to the graduate school, the department, the faculty in the first semester to append and affirm student-supervisor combinations, and eventually the process continues. Should we start doing this, we shall see results as fast as you'll be there. Let's look at student background degrees as a precursor. In our next slide, student background degrees as a precursor to good supervision and supervision style. London College University of East Africa then, which had 3 colleges, Dar es Salaam, Nairobi, Makerere, had graduate students not migrating from discipline to discipline as we see today. Nairobi was mainly engineering. Makerere was mainly medicine and basic sciences that augment the reading and research in medicine, human medicine and veterinary medicine. Dar es Salaam was on political science and law. There is no doubt about the format of the London College of East Africa, because we can see it today. And this is why I'm saying, should we start doing critical thinking and biometry in the first semester? We'll see results. Let us see results from this London College of East Africa today. You'll see the political and democratic stability of Tanzania can borrow a leaf from the law and political science faculty at Dar es Salaam University. You could see the infrastructure and the built environment and standard living in, for example, the urban centers of Kenya. bases itself from the engineering faculty at University of Nairobi. Medicine at Makerere and veterinary medicine, you can see in East Africa, some of the highly specialized systems in health started in Makerere, but somehow we have slept. Some of us who are Ugandans, we know that. Therefore, if I am to be given a student for supervision at PhD, my first objective is to see whether he has migrated or she has migrated and become an academic migrant from the foundation of his bachelor's degree. And as universities and prospective supervisors and senior supervisors, we need to advise our departments, colleges, and university on this, and we get a policy. That's why some universities call some of the migrating students, give them terminator degrees. You have a bachelor's of botany and zoology, you do MBA, on your transcript, they call it a terminator degree. So we need to interrogate, we need to open a conversation and a discussion if we are to become academic. And in reality, when we get to basic sciences, we need to see that basic sciences are foundations of professional degrees like medicine, like engineering. But I want to assure you, if we interrogate how many applications are for physics, mathematics, and chemistry and biochemistry in our universities, the numbers are dwindling. I'm aware about 6 years ago in Makerere, they almost failed to raise applications for veterinary medicine. Why? Because in modern reading and in modern job market, we are moving towards computer, IT, and related disciplines that will suffocate the foundational academics within the basic sciences. When development studies was made into a degree instead of a program, or a degree program instead of a course, we lacked students to read political science, read social sciences. And here we are, as supervisors, lecturers, and professors of universities, not interrogating and opening conversations on these important subjects. Today, medics, lawyers, and accountants have lucrative graduate courses in health economics. There are new courses that come up with challenges and problems that happen. Health economics that is largely offered at University of Cape Town, Alexandria, and some other universities have picked it up because of CDC and the jobs in the UN, the jobs in World Health Organization, the planning required. So some of these baits and highly paying jobs are eroding the academia of the would-be good academics. So we need to sit down as universities and supervisors of key disciplines and make projections and make plans and make models so that we interest a few to remain in the academia we want. Otherwise, sooner or later, we shall have very big gaps and they'll be hard to fill. IT and communication discipline graduates now cut across everywhere. And for that matter, we need also to raise and make effort that even the disciplines that have not been automated and put onto the radar of technology in information technology a quick report. I'll give an example. It is said that cartoons are not programmed and made by historians or biologists, but they are made by engineers. So if any of us is to be there to supervise some of the students that have gone through nursery and have watched cartoons and failed to get tails at the fireplace, I want to assure you, we will see stars, because the brains of such students are open and measurable to levels which you can't imagine. All these differences, therefore, run into conflict, and we need ramifications to redress all the challenges and problems at the department, school, college, and university level, so that we remain superior in planning. There is a need for urgent decision on discipline measures at the graduate level, and this is the work of the graduate schools that advertise, receive applications, process applications, admit, and send students to departments. However, co-opting a few managers as heads of departments during the selection. I think it is high time universities, professors moved to make a discussion and say that departments should be the ones to admit graduate students. Some of my assertions will be wild, but I can tell you, until we do that, sooner or later, we shall see problems. Let us look at university policies in relation to good supervision. University strategic plans in most of our East African and African universities range between 5 and 10 years and are rarely reviewed at any required time for a mid-term and end-term review. Even the institution I head, my team here knows that we are even very late to review the 2012-2017 strategic plan, which was 5 years. So using that example, this complicates emerging changes for a minimum of 3 cohorts of graduate students who begin at the same time when that strategic plan of a university has been rolled out. Policy issues and implications are above supervisors, but it's high time we became part of it if we are to succeed. For example, if policies are not renewed and someone is very fast and moving quickly and progressing at a PhD, particularly those laboratory researches, a student can finish in 2 years. Yesterday, we had an argument on the number of pages of theses as addressed by Professor Tsekwa. But I want to assure you, I know the shortest PhD, which was just 26 pages, references included. This was biomathematics, deriving formulas, and the student finished. But if the policy is that a PhD is finished in 3 years and above, a master's is finished in 2 years, then we run into problems. Then we don't progress on time. Until when shall we on this continent respect time? That's a discussion for another time. IT, library, logistics, and PPDA policies hamper experimental supervision and research in relation to information, procurement, and timely execution. You might wish to procure something, an equipment. You might wish to ship a reading material. a textbook. But then the policy of the university stops you to get what you want on record time. Until you circumvent or probably get a friend who has run to, let's say, Germany, and you send him for the material, I can assure you, this will not help your supervision run smoothly and fast. Department, faculty, college, and Senate meetings that are planned and are of influence when need arises are also programmed. Senate sits like twice, shortly before graduation or shortly before the university council. But I can assure you, in some universities, there are impromptu Senate meetings, there are impromptu graduations. You finish your Viva Voce at PhD, the next door in the atrium, you find your graduation and a sandwich and glasses of wine. I experienced this in Stockholm. I experienced this somewhere, and it was amazing. But someone defends her thesis or his thesis in January and must wait to graduate in November. Yet in June, there was a good job or a good project that required his certificate that he can't get. In other words, some of our policies are like the 10 commandments. We need to think about it. We need to interrogate this. Graduation conditions vary from university to university. I think this is very familiar to us. And rarely do supervisors even attend these graduations. And there are important communications, particularly by the chancellor and chancellors, that we miss out as supervisors. Should you have supervised the master's or a PhD, make effort to attend that graduation. It's memorable. Maybe you could pick a point or two that will help you supervise faster in the next cohort. Final on this slide of policies, national, regional, and global institution associations and graduate processes management ought to harmonize and make dynamic and should be made dynamic as of yesterday. I'll take two examples, all the examples of associations in Africa. We could have the Association of African Universities in Africa. We could have Inter-University Council of East Africa. We could have ICAD here. We could have East African Community Science and Technology Commission that is headquartered in Kigali. How often do these regional, national, and global institutions come together to harmonize and to look at the next page, depending on the fast-changing circumstances in the academia, in the environment, and others. Next slide is on supervisor publications. As I told you that we must take authority. If you are a supervisor, how much authority do you hold in terms of publications relevant to the students you are supervising? This gives you a leverage or gives you an opportunity that should you get students in new idea investigation areas, then you expand in your publications. Then with your superiority and seniority, you support the student even published in the first year. But rarely do we do this. And publication refers to the act of making something public or put it in the public domain so that it is available for critique, for use, and for solving some of the recommendations we need. But of course, keeping in mind that any new invention must be hidden and put as a code. I'll give you an example. During my PhD research, we landed on a product that is a candidate for new contraceptives without side effects. I researched on Dioscorea baia, which is a delicacy for pygmies or forest people, and is only fed in some communities like Eastern Uganda, the Bagisu, in Central Uganda, the Baganda, in Western Uganda, the Banyankore, Banyoro, Batoro. It is fed to old people. Some age bracket that is still fertile and active should not eat Dioscorea baia or Dioscorea dendroatriphyri. But the pygmies, because they are hunter-gatherer communities, they even feed those who are beginning to eat. So during my master's, I came up with a question. Why do pygmies families don't exceed more than 2, maximum 3 children? And when I was discussing my master's data with Dr. Debbie Selson, we found that diet influences physiology, and physiology is on the benchmark of hormones. And that's how I developed my PhD idea, my PhD title. So should we as supervisors get students with new ideas, then we ought to help them. In the context of academia and research, publication typically refers to the dissemination of scholarly and scientific work, such as articles, book chapters, conference papers, and research reports. I want to assure this meeting and participants on this call that none of us from first principles will break through to publish in the high impact journals like the Springer, Elsevier, and they are related discipline-specific journals. It is until you stand on the shoulders of giants that you'll make a breakthrough. I particularly want to thank my mentors, as I tell you my experience, who helped me break into the Springers, break into conservation biology, break into the key standard reckoned publishing houses, the likes of Professor Kayanja, former Vice Chancellor Barara, Aaron Hamilton. There's a journal called Common Grounds Journal. To make a breakthrough in that journal, by then, internet was slow, but we could get feedback. I think we got 21 feedback to do corrections, even on a comma, even on a full stop. And eventually, we did the corrections and our papers were accepted. Therefore, I would urge most of us, even at my senior level now, I still depend on other senior publishers. Recently, I was supervising a PhD at University of Lusaka and University of Zambia. And the student got very good information on nutritive values from indigenous maize varieties. And when I met Professor Peter Foreb of the South African Committee on Food Nutrients, he advised us, and I can't assure you, we have just broken through by him into a key journal that is about to accept our paper. So it is important that we share knowledge, but when you have had a breakthrough on an invention or a new product, you hide it with a code. And this helps us to establish credibility. It helps us to advance in the field of our research and subject discipline. And also, it gives us a chance, because at most conferences and fora, international and regional fora, we get to know of new and emerging ideas. But if you remain in your department, I remain in my African Institute for Capacity Development, I don't go out, and probably we don't plan and save for some of these meetings, then eventually we lose out. Philosophy and subject emerging debates emanate from wild ideas, and some of these ideas are at conferences and meetings. And then publications can be peer-reviewed or non-peer reviewed, which has made our academia get lax discipline, because we program ourselves to get publications for supervision purposes, for promotion. But I think we need to go a notch higher and make cutting edge research that we do get into the likes of Springer Series, Elsevier, historical publishing houses like London Publishing House, Cambridge, and others. And when we do this, then we make our universities exposed, and when webometrics come up, we find we are in the line of the 20s. The next slide is an example of Elsevier, a special issue of 2012 on a range of subjects. Next slide. And this slide shows where I published a book chapter with Doris Muta of the Kenya Forestry Research Institute and others. But as supervisors and academia, we can target the conferences that have been sponsored by publishing houses, because they give a special issue. I know the African Journal of Ecology sponsors conferences with other people. And for that matter, we actually gain from the special issue publication. When we get into these conferences, we should be mindful to know who are the sponsors, because these are most likely interested in the subjects that we have researched, and we always have more funding to do further research. Therefore, I would urge everyone on call in this workshop today that should you have an opportunity to attend a conference, some of the sponsors are hidden, but while at the conference, they come to exhibit. Please make effort to get in touch with them. This is how some of us got funding for research. And in this special issue of traditional forest-related knowledge, we were talking about the starchy foods of the African forests that are a source of pharmaceutical starch for pharmaceutical industry, which has been exploited by other people, but not us. The next slide is on the critical gaps between students and supervisors. These gaps are important, and they help we supervisors to earn mileage in the life of supervision. we have the supervisor-student thin layer or thin line of knowledge gap. I think we should reckon that graduate students are not as low in knowledge as some people could think or would think. Therefore, I would urge everyone to know that the graduate students are actually at the brim of the knowledge we might not hold as supervisors. Then hardworking, most of us as supervisors, we tend not to put a lot of energy in the supervision. And this makes a difference with the Western world. I can assure you, when I was at my PhD, one of a Nigerian student in the same lab told me and said, Dominic, make effort. Jeremy never leaves when you have left. Make effort. Jeremy never enters when you have not come, whether it's winter or what. If you do that, you'll be in the good books and you'll have finished. And I live to reckon the advice I was given by Anok, and later on, I hosted him as a postdoc in Uganda, and we published a good paper on the analgesic properties of a traditional malaria herb, which has actually gotten over 25,000 openings in the academia. We need to be humble, and our character description models and balances between the working class and full-time students, because the world has become too economic and everything needs money. So if a student is busy hunting for the money, you advise, but you don't caution. And then well-read and academic discipline on program, subject matter, and relevant literature is another critical gap that I still see is hard to close if we don't work hard because of technology. Everyone thinks information is just a click away, and we have gotten away from hardcover books, even reading them, leave alone writing more. Let's look at another slide of well-published student supervisor, where you must be well-networked. Actually, that's the paper I produced with Jan Anok. And when you are well-networked, you get discipline experts. When you are well-networked, you get subject publications. You get information source, current and past. You get exposure through seminars, workshops, conferences, and webinars. I can assure you, I want to congratulate some of you who urged ICAD to form a WhatsApp group. Recently, myself and Dr. Kinyuru were hunting for partners to answer a BioInnovate call with a PhD in economics, are French speaking, and in East Africa, we are targeting Burundi, Rwanda, and DRC. But I can assure you, it was too difficult to get until we were helped by Dr. Christian Kakuba of Makerere, who is bilingual. So some of these participations give us network. A supervisor must be well-traveled academically for critique, because you might feel you are the the smartest in your department. But if you go for a conference at the Kansas University, you'll come back quiet on that long flight until Amsterdam. It happened to me, and I learned a lot. Institutionally, old and world universities versus new world universities seem to compete, but I want to assure you, some new universities are out competing the super old universities. And this we have seen in rankings, and we hope we can catch up. And the argument is, should we in the future come face to face, then let us all be honest and have a blended policy and supervision style kind of publication, if not a book, very soon. The next slide takes us to semantics in scholarly work. Semantics in scholarly work are critical. If you look at the side track changes I have put in my students' work, I didn't refer him somewhere. Instead, I put the exact. This helps the student to know that I'm ahead. This helps the student to get the reference he didn't know. This helps the student to compare and make arguments that will improve his work, and will also improve my perception on the argument he had raised. Because the student is Zambian, I am Ugandan, living in East Africa, I might not be with the knowledge of what is on ground. And should I have an opportunity to go on ground, and that means I have to understand what I didn't know. And when this happens, it sharpens my understanding. It also helps the student. Another semantic that we take for granted is when you are superior and you consider yourself above others, particularly in academia, we tend never to be sober. You go to a conference, you go to an academic meeting, and people are arguing as if the world is ending the next second. And this kills the morale of your student. This kills your fellow academicians' interaction in future with you. And we need to check on some of these semantics. Sharp and swift on information interpretation and data interpretation. When it comes to graduate reading and graduate supervision, we must be very sharp. We must have the visual acuity at a very long distance to identify that two fingers brought together are two fingers, not one finger. Like the kite. The kite in 1 kilometer will look at your cheeks down on the ground. We must equally be available. Enough time so that we exhaust issues as mentors and influence assimilation of the mentee. In student supervisor meetings and data dissemination workshops and conferences, we ought to carry along 1 or 2 of our students. At least we have the funding. But you find we go alone, we come back, we want to regurgitate by conversations. No. It is important that we carry along a few of our students. I was carried along by two professors, one in Makerere. He took me to Brisbane. May his soul rest in eternal peace, Professor Bukenya Zeraba. And I was carried to University of Zimbabwe. Myself and other senior people today, I can't tell you how much we learned. Master at upcoming scholars' strength. The mastery of any student we supervise will come up only after they have had a great experience. And that mastery becomes passionate, and it is delivered to the next level. And the meaning and implication of holding a hand of an upcoming scholar remains a life experience. That's why Professor Tsekwa yesterday was telling us that we become life friends with. We must eventually recommend some of our graduates for job, for funding, and when this goes on, we make impartial judgments all the times, and we form non-selective systems. Of course, we cannot forget that all these are done over time. I wish to now call upon the IT team at ICAD, unless if there is a burning question which can come into the plenary when we'll be discussing, that we break into two groups. And group one will answer the question of what are your desired strengths of the students you want to supervise. And group two will interrogate and have a conversation on what are your experiences of the specific qualities graduate students want from supervisors and research promoters. And this should take us about 20 minutes. And when we reconvene, one member of each group will tell us what they have come up with. And then we open the discussion to critique my presentation, to critique my thoughts, to critique my dimension of how I look at supervision and supervising styles, and the policies of our universities, where I also sat for some time, and where we always agree to disagree, and then we move forward.
Prof, you could repeat your question 2, please.
Question 1 is, what are your desired strengths? Technical team, please put the slide of the assignment. Slide of the assignment. Yes, the slide is there. And question 2 is, what are your experiences of the specific qualities graduate students want from supervisors and research promoters? The slide, if I can remind you, where I said, if I were a student now, I would go to a professor who has funding. But the moment you fail to account for the funding, then such a professor will send you out quickly. So let us give ourselves 20 minutes. By my wall clock, it is 25 minutes to 11. So maybe 15 minutes, we should be able to be in our groups and discuss. So 5 to 10 minutes to 12 to 11, we'll convene. So let us break in two groups. Javan, please assist and have the group allocation quickly done.
The groups are now open. And you are encouraged to join any of the groups, but kindly, if you see a group that has got more than 25 people, kindly exit the group and join the other one. Thank you.
I think we can, somebody can take minutes, somebody can be our secretary, somebody to volunteer.
Fine, I can volunteer to take minutes.
Okay, fine. Okay, so members, let's move very fast. What are these experiences of the quality graduate students? Yeah, like we have said, most students would prefer supervisors who have grants, those ones who are interested into your research. Those ones you can call anytime and we respond. Let's keep moving.
Most of them, the chair.
Yes.
Yes, Prof.
We also want a supervisor who is knowledgeable.
Prof?
Yes,
Hello, Prof.
yes.
Hello, yes. Oh, you've joined the group, right? Yeah, I've moved you to group. I've moved you to group 2. Okay, let me check. I can move you to group 1 because I can see who is in group 2. Okay, let me move you to group 1.
Hello.
Nyaraka za talaka zimeonyesha kuwa mtoto wa kike wa rais wa zamani wa Zimbabwe Robert Mugabe alikuwa anamiliki nyumba 25 ikiwemo jumba la kifahari lililopo huko Dubai.
Hello. Diko, buddy. How are you?
Yes. Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, hello. I have failed to go to
Hello,
the.
can anyone hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Kindly unmute. Kindly unmute.
Oh, so
We have broke for the breakout sessions, so I'll just add you to one of the sessions if you're still in the main room, so that you join the sessions that are already on. Kindly make sure you are in one of the breakout rooms, please. There are discussions going on in those rooms. Kindly, we have like 10 minutes in the discussion rooms. Kindly join any of the discussion rooms. Kindly join any of the discussion room or the discussion room assigned. Kindly. There are discussions continuing in those rooms. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back. Kindly unmute yourself, Prof.
Yeah, thank you, the technical team, for the breakout into the two groups. May I request group one chairperson or secretary to present their findings in relation to what they discussed is important and the desired strengths of the students who would wish to supervise.
Thank you, Prof. I'm hoping today I'm a good student. I've allowed my camera on. Well, I'm not sure whether it's working from your end. Is it working?
No.
Sorry.
Yes,
Oh,
it
no,
is.
it's on. It's on now. It's on now. Yes,
It's on
yes.
now.
Yeah, so
Last time I presented on some solutions we would want for our student, and we said we would want our cameras on, and my
Yes.
camera was off. Technically, I was not a good student, but I'm sorry for that. So today I was taking notes for group one, where we were looking at the desired strengths that we would want from our student, and members came up with several points that we noted that one of the things that was clear is that we would want students that are self-motivated, students that are, have good communication skills. They are good at taking notes, they are good at listening, because every now and then you give them points and you want them to actualize those points at their own time. We're also looking forward to students who are self-driven and willing to learn, have an openness to adjust, because sometimes they come to you with suggestions or ideas in their area of research, and you try navigate around it to make it logical. And when they are rigid, they do not adjust to your ways of thinking. So you want students who can blend in and of course be flexible to whatever you are adding to the table, not necessarily twisting their arm, but adding value to their thinking. So you also additionally want a student who is a critical thinker, in the sense that they will have a deeper thoughts on the areas that you discuss. Like the last time when we were discussing students, we were talking about student taking notes and later submitting to you via mail that Dr. Prof confirmed that during our meeting, these are the areas and topics that we discussed so that we can continuously work on them. You're also looking forward to students who are independent in the areas of their research and also in ways that you can, sorry, I'm taking off someone. I will talk later. So you want students who are also good at teamwork, who are collaborative. They are able to work with other students if it's in the laboratory or wherever they are. They need to share resources. So you want students who are good at teamwork. They can collaborate with others and be able to give outputs in given time, not giving them some hard times. And also you want students who are hardworking in the sense that you don't have to go fishing them in the hostels, or you don't have to keep on asking them, last time we discussed this, where is the progress, and so forth. In fact, you want students who are bringing progress to you every now and then as agreed. Then you also want students who have sufficient emotional strength. While by emotional strength, we are looking at students who have good skills in accommodating others, as we said. And you're also looking forward to students who are proficient in some areas, but if not, they are ready to learn. In these areas, we're looking at statistical packages, because when they do their data analysis or the experiments, they will need some analysis. And so you're looking at students who are good or who are proactive to learn, self-driven to learn these skills. So you're also looking for that students who are problem solvers when they are stuck or they have come to a a dead end, they do not necessarily have to look up to you to give the solutions, but they are able to navigate around and actually come to you, finally tell you I was stuck on this and I was able to navigate and I got this as the outcome. And from your end, you can look at the solutions, whether they are viable or what you need to add to it. Well, the mental health issue was not like it was raised by members that much, but we want students who also are aware of their mental status, because if students are not aware of their mental status, then it will be a challenge. I have experienced, not as a supervisor, but I've experienced seeing some of my friends having issues with mental health, and the supervisors had to actually refer them to the counselors so that they're able to. Accepting the mental health status is not easy for most of the people, even me inclusive. If you tell me you are judging that I look like I'm not okay, it will not be easy. So I would say having someone being aware of their mental health is also a good addition to their work, because they are able to navigate around areas or things that will depress them and are able to handle them. You also want students who have good, or students who have perseverance. They are able to absorb the shocks that come with it. Like one member was saying, some of the research areas are very demanding, and so you want students who are able to cope to that. During the COVID-19, one of my friends was doing their research and the labs were closed suddenly. They were studying on rabbits. And I'm sure you heard about a student in JKUAT running around catching rabbits, and there is a memo that wanted to be issued that those rabbits are not good for consumption, because they disappeared from the lab and she was halfway with her studies. And now you can imagine starting all over again research that was taking some time. So you need students who are good in shock absorbing of this. And also after getting that dead end, you need to have students, as I said, with good pockets, deep pockets in this case, they're rich. Anyway, they need to be able to bring on board resources when needed. Then you also need students. Sometimes, if you're lucky, getting a student who is politically affiliated, they will not only give you connections, but they will also be able to give you solutions in good time, especially when you're dealing with things that you need a call to get a breakthrough in whatever you're going through. And lastly, but not the least, a sociable student. When you tell a student we need to touch base, does not necessarily over brown or clear bottle, but it simply means we can have a cup of coffee, or for us, we can have the dawa. So as we talk and discuss these things, I submit for the group. Thank you.
Thank you, group one. Can we have group two? Chairperson or secretary of group two, and then the blend will be to interrogate each other. Actually, to interrogate the tripartite plus the presenter.
Thank you, Chair, for group two. Our question was, what are your experiences of the specific qualities graduate students want?
You are muted, please.
Remy, you are muted.
Oh, sorry. The first one is from Professor Dominic's point that the students would want a supervisor who has one grant so that they are also involved. The second point was a supervisor who is knowledgeable in the subject area, one who helps identify the gaps, the theory, the literature review, and who is updated on trends in that area of research. Third one is a supervisor who guides the student, who guides students whenever there is a need. The next one is one who is available, supervisor who is available to them, one who is published. They wouldn't want a supervisor who is struggling like themselves, one who is supportive, listens to them, and acts in a manner that supports them. One who is approachable when there are any problems, is patient with them. Point 8 is one who is reliable in terms of walking the journey with them from the beginning up to the time of graduation. Not one who would throw tantrums and even drop them along the way. Number 9 is one who has successful past supervisions. A good story runs around him that he has successfully supervised. The next point is one who is well exposed at the national and international level. It means he attends conferences, seminars, and is well exposed. The next point, number 11, was one who is respectful of their opinions. Students would not want to a supervisor who doesn't respect their opinions. One who is ethical. Next point is one who is prompt in giving them feedback. Remember, there are supervisors who can stay with the students work forever. They would want one who is prompt in the feedback. Another one is one who is in administrative positions for strategic reasons. Students think that they want to move, and therefore a supervisor who is in a strategic administrative position will help push the agenda towards completion. There was one point, and I think this is dependable, where a member said that they would also want a supervisor who is dishonest. Dishonest in terms of if he found some plagiarism in their work, he just flips over them and doesn't point out, because that one can become very embarrassing and damaging to them. Thank you. That is some of the key points he raised.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for that presentation. I wonder how the last point would rhyme into the ranks of credible work and the ranks of the softwares that are now all over and can even interpret Russian and Arabic. So, but that's it. Now, for the next 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, let us open burning questions from the three sides, critiquing my presentation, critiquing the mind of group 1, critiquing the observation of group 2. You can raise your hand, and then we quickly, and then we still have just 2 slides to summarize the presentation. And I think today we should be able to finish on time, 11:30. So, plenary.
Suleiman.
Yes, Suleiman, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There was this point you mentioned where you seemed to be encouraging the old system where people must progress with the bachelor's qualification or subject area right up to PhD, rather than the situation where somebody will have something else in bachelor's, something else at master's, and probably something else at PhD. But we also know that, yes, that is a good approach, because it would make somebody really grounded in the specific area that they have started with from the beginning. But we also know that in the current world, in the modern world, it is so dynamic that we don't expect somebody to remain grounded in one area, in some cases, people can actually become irrelevant if they do that. So I don't know how can we harmonize this position, because there are cases where I know of somebody who studied pharmacy at bachelor. Sorry for that noise. Somebody studied pharmacy. My God. Sorry. Somebody studied pharmacy at the undergraduate level. And then when it came to masters, somehow he was diverted. He had to divert because it was inevitable. Either he would lose his job or he would have to divert to something else. So this person decided to divert, and somehow he saved his position. And he has come out to become quite relevant, and he has even published a lot of works in this new area where he is now. And I thought that is something probably we can also encourage. And I've also learned from some literature I have read, where you find somebody did philosophy, maybe those were olden days, somebody did philosophy at the lower levels, but they have come out in the later stages of their life, you find they're doing totally different things, and they have become very famous in those new areas. So I just wanted to see how do we harmonize these two positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sulaiman. My emphasis was on the foundational basic subject. And my worry as a long-time academic relates to lack of the foundational subjects that give or breed professional subjects, the physics, chemistry, mathematics. And if we encourage everybody to migrate, which is good because of demand, then sooner or later we shall lose the foundation until we get a strong foundation. So how can we blend this? To answer you direct, this is a question of planning of our universities, a question of planning of our national planning ministry and the education sector. On a click of a mouse, for Egypt, South Africa, Morocco, and I think Algeria, you will know the professionals in different areas. And you'll also see the gaps, which we can do and Google after this lecture. But then, on a click of, I'm Ugandan, on a click of the Ugandan statistics, you can't even know how many doctors are there and where they are. So my argument is based on the critics and context that universities ought to lead planning. And it's unfortunate most universities are not sponsored by governments. They are governments in research. We are sponsored by development partners and individuals, especially in the areas like that person wanted to do, to divert, and probably he had the money to save his job. But I can assure you, it's an obligation of government to sponsor key foundational research and investigation lines. Short of that, I can assure you, last week on Thursday, if I use this example, the Honorable Minister of Science, Technology and Information shocked us in our online meeting to say that Uganda has no successful stories of research. We are just claiming. So if we are to be authentic in our region as East Africa, and we want a pharmacist, like you have said, how much pharmacognosy does he know? How many candidate plants that in indigenous and traditional knowledge can be brought onto the line of processing? And how many products do we have? But if I do pharmacy, tomorrow I do anesthesia because I'm an expert in the mixing and management of drugs. Then the next PhD, I do it in health economics because World Health Organization has vacant positions. I can assure you it is the obligation of government advised by the university to say we have gaps. The argument, I'm not worried that people are migrating. The argument is that I'm worried we don't have a lineup professionals and academic to keep subjects. I'll give an example of Cambridge. They divided biology into botany and zoology, but I want to assure you today, they have gone back to biology. The engineering was divided, but I want to assure you these days it has recombined because there are things that can't work in isolation. I thank you. Next, Karen Kavelele.
Thanks very much, Prof. And I was going to comment on exactly what you have just commented, the last point you have made, that in most of our institutions, we are doing research, but it has no consumer. So
Correct.
you rightly put it. We need to have a national direction that this is what people need to do. In fact, it has increased nowadays. You find, I come from the background of engineering, and you find engineers coming even for PhDs, but they are out there working. So my question usually is, in our industries, do we require that level of research? Or these people are just there, they have their PhDs, but whatever the work they are doing may not necessarily have a consumer. Now, you had raised another point, and you talked about nowadays people have become jacks of all trade, I would say. There's no specialization. Is it in order, because I've turned away students, not one, not two, who came to me and I said, the area of research you want to get into, it's not my specialization. And they look at me and they are a little bit, I would say they find it absurd when I turn them away. But I feel at that level at PhD, I tell them, I am not there to read your English. I must be knowledgeable in that area for me to get into that. But I find that there are a lot of times that the students will go read out there, the internet and everything, and they come up with topics, and they'll come with things that you haven't done research in, and yet they are requesting. Is that in order? Or are they moving ahead and therefore for us, we are just rubber stamping? You are learning as the student learns, and therefore you are not able to critique as you should as a supervisor. So I don't know whether, whereas I appreciate there are those new areas that are opening up, but this specialization, how do we systematically move out with them that yes, my area of specialization is this, but I cannot know it all at that level. At undergraduate, because they're not doing anything serious, yes, I could. But at PhD level, I think we need to narrow down to the specialization. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I want to assure you, when I was doing my postdoc in York, my promoter and supervisor, Madame Smas, told me, PhD and postdoc is too much of nothing in order to generate new knowledge. So I totally agree with you, as someone has, through the chat, has just reminded me of someone who was proud and was on social media, someone who is 10 degrees, but you ask yourself, of what value? In China, one engineer has 25,000 artisans, technicians, but here you'll find 100 engineers and we are just developing TVETs. So I want to assure everybody on call in this meeting that the Director Training and Extension at ICAD is critically taking notes. And in that, Karen, as we have advanced, our next meeting that will be face-to-face, industry, government, particularly the planning ministries, like Treasury and Planning Uganda and Tanzania, must come to listen. We need to get back. No donor will sponsor an invention in Uganda, in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Malawi, in Zambia, in Morocco. We must do our part. We must feed our own children to get results. Professor Twaha? Professor Basamba?
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Dominic, for giving me this opportunity to also contribute. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking you for a well-researched and well-presented views that you gave us in your PowerPoint slides. I have really learned a lot. That was very good. But having said that, I would like to start by, this may not necessarily be a criticism of what you presented, but maybe supplementary ideas. You talked about most of us trying to make an effort to penetrate the powerful publishing houses such as Springer, Elsevier, and others. But I can assure you, these are not very easy publishing houses to go to, especially people from the third world. Unless you go through the arms and the shoulders of someone from the developed countries, it can really be extremely difficult. That's why you see publication outputs from Africa and the online presence of African publications is very low, because it is very difficult for African researchers to penetrate those publishing houses, like Cambridge Press and whatever. However, I've noted over time that we have, these days we have open access online credible journals, which are well peer reviewed, and they have a very high research output. They are massive outputs of research papers, and they actually often they are free really. You can publish a journal, manuscripts online, and they are free, but many people are not aware. So what would you advise us or advise the colleagues to do? So at least to leave living around the Spring and Elsevier and other powerful publishing houses, how can we jump on open access journals or online journals which are credible? Then on the part of the students, I liked the ideas my colleagues contributed, but what I observed was that it is very important to have a focused, committed, hardworking student who is motivated to complete an MSc or a PhD, which is very good. And finally, without wasting a lot of my time, because I know some other colleagues may want to contribute, I was shocked when I heard from group 2 that someone suggested that they like promoters who are dishonest. I think this is promoting criminality. Both the student and the supervisor actually are partners in crime. This is something we should discourage here. And I wouldn't want to be part of that. But it was shocking here that some people can think like that. You can see how criminal-minded some people can be. But as professionals and serious scientists, we should not really encourage this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Twaha. Quickly help colleagues on call in this seminar, and also universities and departments. You have rightly said the Western world has a keen key and eye to some specific journals, but we can unlock them through partnerships with their academia. And that's why I encourage everyone to at least save, if the university cannot support you or your project funding cannot support you, to go into those international conferences. When you get there, you really thrill some of them and they quote you strongly. In 1995, I presented a paper at Pedu Lake in Malaysia. And I want to assure you, the whole of 96 and 97, I was invited to Utrecht. I was invited to Lisbon. So it's important that we open our minds. And on the last point you've made about plagiarism, yesterday the IGG Uganda was a chief guest, I think, at the graduation at Kampala University, and he cautioned people to guard against their hard-earned history and profile of our universities. I think when we come face to face, they'll tell us why they want it so, but I wouldn't also be party to that. And I think in the many years I've supervised and I was in university, prior I could have been one of the hard supervisors then, but all my students of PhD have international jobs, have reputable jobs, are leading in positions that I can't even afford to be. So it is important that as we do closing parts in one of my slides, I mentioned that Einstein once said that I'm enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination, and imagination is more important than knowledge. So when we are supervisors, we are arts, however, in engineering, medicine. So we imagine for our students we supervise because knowledge is limited, but imagination encircles the world. So a supervisor is an imaginable reasoning tool. Any other hand as we close, because I can see numbers have reduced by about 5. Any other hand up, or I request the technical team to present that Einstein fellow slide and then the parting experience, and we close. Javan, please, back to you. And thank you for the discussion points, group 1 and group 2. I'm humbled as someone who has presented to you. Javan, the 3 remaining slides. By the way, members on the call, I didn't want to enter into the technical hiccup we got yesterday, so I requested the technical team to relay the slides. They are even closer to the server, so anything is smoother. Javan? Javan?
Sharing now.
Yes, please. In the next 3 minutes, we should close. In this slide, participants and everyone on call, I have on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, I'm quoting Einstein, who says imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited, imagination encircles the world. The managing director of IBM in 1949 predicted that there was a market for only 10 computers. But imagine how many computers an individual has, right from the phone to the laptop. So we need to be good at prediction, and that will rule the world and will help us solve problems, particularly after SARS, COVID, Marburg and Ebola and others, and the engineering and built science problems we see, the roads that have been taken by floods. So we need to be alert. Knowledge amassing changes and develops like growth. If you look at me, I was about 14, 13 years then, and that Dominic of 14 years meets Dominic of this age in a necktie. They might not know each other, but I can assure you, in my own intuition as an old faculty, I ought to believe that the emerging knowledge is superior. So I would respect Dominic of then. Next slide. So we need to respect our students as we supervise them. My experience, I didn't want to bring it earlier on, but those of you who are not aware of what I've done, I did teach in a university for about 23 years. and I supervised over 20 undergraduate reports in the 20 years. I've supervised the 35 MSCs and 3 MAs that were in the midline. After Senate declared me qualified to supervise at masters, of course, with Professor FIB Kayanja, you'd first present your CV and what you've done, and they would qualify you to supervise. I've supervised the 17 PhDs, of course, among those, some at Mbarara, Makerere, University of Zambia and Lusaka, Cape Town 1. So I'm proud that I still connect with my students who are now colleagues. And as we do that, then you get surprised, like just in January, I got a surprise publication in a journal I would not have made at this time since I'm in management. Yeah, I was appointed as an external examiner for several MSCs and PhDs. I was selected and appointed as a discussant and opponent in that structure of critiquing a viva voce at Makerere, Chambogo, Zambia first, and Alexandria, and I think that's how they identified me to supervise their students. And this time it is very easy. Let us make our CV, let us make our profiles online. You'll be surprised by who will contact you. University policy framework is well followed. If well followed, guide supervision. I was lucky to attend and be a member of Senate and the University Council. And I think I used to argue with government seconded council members. And I'm glad some of our hard raised motions have made changes, particularly on funding and fundraising and formation of grants offices in the universities I served, Makerere, Mbarara University and KIU. And then graduate student selection and timely reporting puts students at a good stand and footing for the course and timely completion. We need to do that. Clear guidelines on application, this is for graduate schools, should ask for an idea, ask for a title and a concept for admission. And these should be volunteered to departments so that we begin some of the questions we've been asking ourselves since Tuesday when we began this course. And finally, student supervisor and student department and student library relationships should be improved. In conclusion, for our today's discussion, graduate supervision today stands at crossroads of IT, new academic era, changing knowledge of the cutting edge research, and everybody is working hard to get an innovation and invention, which is not easy against philosophical and academic interests of the past. So we must change and we must bring the old and young faculty together to agree and we get a blended thing. Therefore, urgent conversations are needed. University policy on promotion ought to reflect many facets, publications in the impact index journals. As Professor Twa has said, we need to look at what we can do best, and when the Western world picks on it, then we shall be given a window into those spring and others, because they see we have a substance to and material to contribute. Particularly, I would like to appreciate academia, which has exposed much of the well-researched works we have in our continent. Student supervisor level must not exceed 2 to 1 and 3 to 1 at masters. The academic calendars of graduate reading ought to be flexible for those who are fast at graduation. And finally, old faculty ought to accept advice and superior support from our students. As Albert Einstein said, the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for the attendance. And I put the last slide to clap for all of you, because it takes time for an individual of your level and qualification and experience to listen to another all this long. Javan, put my clapping for my class. I thank you. And may I request the director T&E and the technical team to share all the weeks, maybe PowerPoints and the audios, because it is when the nail is hot that we can shape it in any form for our participants. Any housekeeping from Director T&T? I thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Birugaba. I'm sure all the participants will join me in thanking you for that very nice presentation. And particularly that last slide where you showed the experience that you have, which is very deep. And you have a very deep knowledge of the subject. So we are privileged to have you on our team of presenters. I didn't have much to add, apart from informing participants that we have now come to the end of the first week of the training course. We don't have any presentations tomorrow or Sunday. I'd like to thank you all for maintaining commendable discipline. You've all generally been very punctual and attentive, and also very active during the discussions. And many of you have made contributions which have been really enriching to the course. We've not only been able to learn from the presenters, but we've also been able to learn from each other. So I wish you a restful weekend and hope to see you back on Monday, rejuvenated and ready for the week ahead. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a blessed weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
See you on Monday.
Bye.